big deal, but you know, they'll give me the list of exercises and stuff. It's always good to know.
Right. I got to play that.
Yeah.
Samson.
I think so, although I went for a very hilly run in Atlanta, and like immediately I felt
Because it's stretched. So part of it is also relaxing this, because this is part of the tendon. These two muscles form that. So don't overstretch. It's the opposite. Until you actually do the opposite. This. Shorten the muscle. Tendon heals slowly. So if you overstretch it too soon,
That's
it just
something
keeps
that I
returning.
never.
okay. So maybe not so much downward dog.
Yeah. Leave those out for a while. Do you have any HA tape or anything like that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. But I don't.
Because that's a good thing to take. Is to like put that on the I can give some real short this is a little bit of a stretch. Have you used it before?
No.
I've never here.
Good morning.
Marvin Dog. Where are you?
It's too early to be stringing calls to meet brass.
How to wake you up?
I'm a brass player.
Morning person, huh?
Except when I have to play them.
What do you play?
I play tuba. I play for the New Albany Symphony.
A rare tuba player with a gig.
Yeah. Actually, the last gig, I actually played on every piece, which is weird for a tuba player. I sat there and I'm like, oh, now I don't get to screw around.
What was the?
We did tribute concert to Judy Garland. And the lady sounded just like her.
What did she do looks wise? Did she
Similar to her. I enjoyed it.
Mary.
We had a lot of cellos. I had to play loud for a change. Because it was outside.
Wait, where are you, John? Where are you?
All right.
I know. Okay, good job, buddy. It's good.
Yeah, I have didn't want to start with
That's right, Jonathan.
it's always like when we're set off on one another. I don't care about.
At least we don't have the extensions, but except on the outside of the wall. Is that our tour?
It's always a tenor.
Baseball game. Showtime.
This is averted.
Hattie, you're finding an interesting way to get your heart pumping for the service.
I did go backwards.
All right. Well, Shana Tova, everyone. Wishing you a happy and healthy new year as we are looking to begin 5784 here in song. We're going to sing the beautiful anthem of our season, We Return, We Return, We Return again to that version of ourselves we seek. On singing our way through our service, Hayom Te'amseinu.
Amen.
We're so fortunate that we get a lot of the Sha'arinim choir this morning. I want to wish you a Shana Tova, everyone. That prayer, Hayom Ta'amsenu, is a beautiful and hopeful note on which we start our Rosh HaShanah service. It says, God, please strengthen us and bless us and grant our well-being. Inscribe us for a good life. Hear our cry. Sustain us. Help us to be a little better, a little kinder, a little more generous in this coming year. There's a beautiful story in Jewish tradition from the 19th century. A man has been wandering around a forest for several days, not knowing which is the right way out. Suddenly, he saw a man approaching him. His heart was filled with joy. He said, "Now I will certainly find out which is the right way," he thought to himself. When one man neared the other, he said to him, "Brother, tell me which is the right way. I have been wandering around this forest for several days." Said the other to him, "Brother, I do not know the way out either, for I too have been wandering around here for many, many days. But this I can tell you, do not take the way that I have been taking, for it would lead you astray. And now let us look for a new way out together." Each of us approaches these holy days from a unique perspective with our own baggage, our own issues, our own brokenness. But perhaps in this new year, we can find ourselves in one another. We can find the path out of the forest with one another. All we have to do is join our hands, walk together, supporting each other, one step at a time. We're going to continue our service with the singing of Matovu. You can find that on page 110 in your gold machzor, 110. Let's join together in singing. Let's read together on page 129. May it be your will, Adonai our God and God of our ancestors, that we discipline ourselves in Torah and devote ourselves to mitzvot. Help us to keep far from sin, to master temptation, and to avoid falling under its spell. May our darker passions not rule us, nor evil companions lead us astray. Rather, strengthen in us the voice of conscience, prompt us to deeds of goodness, and bend our every impulse to your service. Today and every day, let us be gracious, loving, and compassionate in your eyes and in the eyes of all humanity. Baruch atah Adonai, gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose love for the people of Israel is revealed in acts of goodness. Join together in Esa Enai, page 131. We continue on page 139. Let's read together at the top of the page. Beloved friend who calls us to conscience, remind us of our own strength, invites us to grow, empowers us to act. Cosmic mysteries are yours, but the earth is ours, to tend and heal as best we can. Beloved partner in creation, we join our strength with yours to make you real and true. We'll invite you, if you're able, to please rise as we join together in the Chatzi Kaddish on page 141. may be seated. We continue on page 142 in the middle of the page. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer or uvarei hoshech, Osei shalom uvarei et hakol, or olam ba'otzor chayim, orot me'ofei amar vayechi. Source of blessings, our eternal God, your power fills the cosmos, shaping light, creating darkness, making peace and fashioning things. Infinite light that is preserved in life's treasure house, lights from the darkness, said God, and it was so. On page 146. Ahava rabba haftanu Adonai Eloheinu chemla gedola v'tera chamalta aleinu. Let's read this together at the bottom of the page. Love abundant, love unstinting. Our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning of your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. On the next page, 148. Bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth. Lead us with upright pride to the land that is ours. For you are a God of miracles and wonders. From all the peoples of the earth, you sought us out and brought us near to you, to your great, enduring truth. So with love, we acknowledge and proclaim that you are one. Baruch Ata Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael, be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled us out as your people, Israel, with love. I'll invite you, if you're able, to please rise for the Shema on the next page.
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובפי שעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות להם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
In just a moment, we're going to sing the Mi Chamocha prayer, the prayer of thanks and gratitude that the Israelites sang when they crossed the sea from slavery to freedom. Even at a time when there are so many problems in our world, it's important for us to pause and express gratitude for all the wonderful things happening in our lives. And our community has a lot for which to be thankful in this past year. This last year at TBS, we celebrated 13 weddings, 9 baby namings and brisses. Thank God, none for the Barla family. Those days are behind us. We just started religious school with 18 very eager kindergarten students ready to begin their Jewish education. 15 students became bar mitzvah on this bima this past year. And this year we had over 50 adult learners in our Melton classes at TBS and our other adult education classes as well. Participation in services has been nice, like we haven't seen since before the pandemic, so it feels like we're all coming back together. Most importantly and most consistently, we have fostered a sense of community here, and we have felt like a real Kehila Kedosha, one family in this sanctuary. So I want to ask you to take a moment and think about something for which you are grateful personally this year. Perhaps some event or some milestone that has happened in your life or something that you have overcome. And if you will just take a moment, share it with someone sitting next to you, some positive thing. And then after we've shared all those with one another, we'll sing together Mi Chamocha. Someone's got to have something. Let's see, anything positive with you guys this past year? Yeah. Yeah, right? Yeah. Absolutely. I hear a lot of joyous conversation. I'm going to pull it back together here as we sing together Mi Chamocha, page 164.
Adonai, mi kamocha, medar b'kodesh,
Nora tehilo, oseh feleh, Nora tehilo, oseh feleh. Yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bye bye yum bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bye bye yum bye, yum bum bye bye. Adonai Yilov leolam vayeh, leolam 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 vayeh. Yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bye bye yum bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bidi bum bum bye bye, yum bye bye yum bye, yum bum bye bye, yum bye bye yum bye, yum bum bye bye.
One of my favorite poems for this time of year. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you hang my first painting on the refrigerator, and I immediately wanted to paint another one. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you feed a stray cat, and I learned that there was a good deed to be kind to animals. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make my favorite cake for me, and I learned that the little things can be special in life. When you thought I wasn't looking, I heard you say a prayer, and I knew there is a God, and I could always talk to that God. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make a meal and take it to a sick friend, and I learned how important it is to care for others. When you thought I wasn't looking, I felt you kiss me goodnight and felt loved and safe. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears come to your eyes, and I learned that it's okay to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw that you cared, and I wanted to be everything that I could be. When you thought I wasn't looking, I learned most of life's lessons that I need to know to be a good, productive person when I grow up. When you thought I wasn't looking, I looked at you, and I wanted to say, thanks for all the things I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. In a moment, we're going to recite the Amidah prayer, the section that begins, that's called Our Parents, our ancestors. This section of the service says, thank you, God, for all the wonderful things that those who became before me did to make me who I am today. This time of year, as we finally remember Rosh Hashanah dinners or other family gatherings, we acknowledge our parents and we thank them for the beautiful gifts that they have given to us, and we bring them into our lives every single day. We'll invite you, if you're able, to please rise as we continue on page 166 with the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei avoteinu v'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomer Hasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Hasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava.
On page 169. Remember us, Melech, crown of creation, lover of life. Remember us when you fill the cup of life. And for your sake, author of life, make us characters on your page, names that live for your sake between the covers of your book.
Shemo, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah.
You may be seated. Before she died, Gilda Ratner wrote what we might read as a contemporary Unatana Tokef. She wrote, I wanted a perfect ending, so I sat down to write the book with the ending in place before there was an ending. Now I've learned the hard way that some poems don't rhyme, and some stories don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Like my life, this book has ambiguity. Like my life, this book is about not knowing, having to change, taking the moment, and making the best of it, without knowing what's going to happen next. In a moment, we're going to continue and we'll hear the haunting words of Unatana Tokef prayer with its troubling themes of who shall live and who shall die. We are all painfully aware of those who are no longer with us. So this prayer is particularly tough. But at its core, Unatana Tokef reminds us that none of us knows how much time we have on earth. No time is guaranteed. But God has given us the ability to determine the quality of our lives. We can make our life a thing of beauty and value. So as we read and sing these words this morning, may we continue to work to make each day count as we enter 5784.
Ayom, ayom.
proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens the deepest awe and inspires the highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love. Your reign is a reign of truth. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten, and when your book of memories opens, it speaks for itself, for every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. On page 176, and so the great shofar will cry Tekiah. A still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. For in your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world pass before you like sheep before the shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments.
Rosh HaShanah ikatevu uyom zom kippur yechatevu. 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 Rosh Hashanah ikatevu uyom zom kippur yechatevu.
On page 179. Page 179. On Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge sealed by wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead, opening wide before us. The day of fasting narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a year, and this we know. Let's read together. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some will die young, and some very old. Some by water, some by fire. Some by sword, and some by beast. Some by hunger, and some by thirst. Some by plague, and some by earthquake. Some by stoning, and some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease. Some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind. Some will have strife. Some will be tranquil. Some will be tormented. Some will be raised high, and some will be brought low. Some will have riches, and some will be impoverished. Even so, the way we act, the way we speak, the way we meet God's image in ourselves and in others, these are things that have great power to make our lives matter. Therefore, let us make whole the broken shards, green and thick the withering grass. Let the wind fill us with urgency for life. Let dreams give birth to justice and goodness. God of holiness, God of hope, let us glimpse your truth as we attach our hope to yours. We join together and sing L'Ador Vador. In just a moment, we're going to turn to the first of our shofar sections. The shofar that Lindsay is going to be beautifully blasting for us today. Uh-oh. Okay. The choir is trying to add some choreography. All right. Okay. The shofar, I should say, has three main values that we want to pay attention to on this Rosh Hashanah. First, the idea of the shofar is for it to be an alarm for us to wake up and to change. And the idea is that we don't have to be set in our ways, that no matter where we are in our lives, we can always make some positive change for the better. The second idea behind the shofar is that we blast the shofar to remind us to wake up to gratitude in our lives, that no matter where we're feeling, that there's got to be some goodness someplace for which we can be grateful. And finally, it is our people's ancient call for hope. The idea being that hope endures. That no matter where we are, no matter how stuck we're feeling, no matter what kind of groove we feel like we need to get into but can't get into, that the shofar reminds us that it is possible in this coming year to make our lives a little bit better. In a moment, we're going to hear the first of those three sections that we have in our prayer book. They're spread kind of throughout the service in Mishkan HaNefesh. The first focus is on sovereignty, turning back to godliness. The second section that we'll hear later on focuses on remembering our past and the beauty that can bring into our lives today. And the final section will remind us to have hope for the future. May these three shofar sections help to wake us up, to find a little bit of gratitude in our lives, and to hold on to hope. I'll invite you to please turn to page 205. And Lindsay, you want to come to the bima? Let's read together this kavanot on 205. Ribono shel olam, power of all, have compassion on the souls of Israel. Open our hearts to do teshuvah before you. Open their souls for the sake of returning to you. Dwell on each sound of the shofar. Contemplate its meaning. Tikiyah, one whole note. Shivarim tiruah, 3 broken notes, 9 staccato notes. Tikiyah, one whole note. May we return to the right path that has the power to make us whole again. Tikiyah, once I was whole. Shivarim tiruah, in the wear and tear of living I became broken and shattered. Tikiyah, my teshuvah has the power to make me whole again. Blessed are the hearts that respond to the majestic music of the shofar. Blessed is the gift of life, the power of renewal that brings us to this day. We'll invite you to please rise. Why don't you come stand right in the middle here, Lindsay? These are the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekeyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen. Tikiyah. Shivarim tiruah. Tikiyah. Tikiyah. Shivarim. Tikiyah. Tikiyah. Tiruah. Tikiyah. Beautiful. You may be seated. Hayom. Sure. Oh, actually, no, it'll be a while. Hayom Harat Olam. We're going to get there. There we go. On page 208. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, ratzei v'minchinatenu, kachenu b'mitzvotecha v'tein chalkenu b'toratecha, sabenu mituvecha v'samchenu b'shuatecha, v'chanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava uvratzon Shabbat kodshecha, v'nachnu va Yisrael mikadshei shemecha, v'taher libenu le'ovdecha be'emet, ki ata Elohim emet, uvdvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad. God who is ours, God of our fathers and our mothers, may our rest on this Shabbat bring you pleasure. Lead us to holiness through your mitzvot, and may each of us find a portion of Torah that is ours. You bestow such goodness. Teach us to be satisfied, to know the joy of your salvation. Let your holy Shabbat be our heritage, embraced freely with love, and may all our people bring holiness to your name by resting on this day. Help us to serve you truly with purity of heart, for you are a faithful God, whose truth stands forever. Baruch atah Adonai, melech al kol haaretz, mikadesh ha-Shabbat, ve'Yisrael, ve'yom hazikaron. Our praise to you, Eternal One, whose power pervades earth. You bring holiness to Shabbat and to the people Israel and to this day of remembrance. We continue with our prayer for peace and holiness and goodness. Sim Shalom. to, please rise. We're on page 223. Let's read this responsively. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lifanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu, Valol Aleinu, V'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei Dever V'cherev V'ra'av Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei Kol Tzara Mastin Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the rain of all goes bad. Avinu Malkeinu, Chodvenu B'Sefer Chayim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Va'anenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asin, Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka, V'chesed, V'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, mighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Well, Shana Tova, everyone. This past summer, I was getting Lauren's car serviced, and unfortunately, I forgot to bring my book with me. So I was stuck in the Germain Honda waiting room, and playing on the TV in front of me was an HGTV show called My Lottery Dream Home. Maybe you've seen it. The show follows lottery winners as they go from modest homes to giant mansions. The couple featured in that episode looked very happy and very excited to be moving into their lottery dream home. But winning the lottery may not be as great as it's cracked up to be. I recently read a book called Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World by Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's the Surgeon General of the United States. Near the beginning of the book, he shares a story about an actual lottery winner named James, who Dr. Murthy one time saw in clinic. James was seeking help with his diabetes and high blood pressure. The patient and doctor had had a fairly routine appointment up until then, and out of nowhere, James shared some information that he thought maybe didn't apply to this visit. Dr. Murthy writes, out of the blue, James delivered what seemed to me at the time a complete non sequitur. He said, winning the lottery was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. Really? Dr. Murphy asked, not even knowing that he had won the lottery. Why? Given the invitation, James poured out his entire story. It turned out that he was being quite literal. He had actually won the lottery, and a sizable amount at that. Prior to that, he had been a baker. He enjoyed his work and was gratified with the food he prepared, and he gave people happiness and pleasure. Although he was single, he had a community of people he liked. They worked alongside him in the bakery, so he never felt alone. When he won the lottery, all of that changed. Suddenly, he was rich, so he had this thought that I need to upgrade my life. Taking his cue from messages he had absorbed in society around him, he decided to enter the world of luxury and leisure. He assumed that this would make him happier than slaving away in a kitchen. It was as if his new status compelled him to become a completely different person. James quit his job and moved to an upscale neighborhood in an oceanside community. There, with all of his needs met and a constant stream of money coming in, he was living the proverbial dream. Yet, despite his new trappings, this dream felt to him more like a nightmare. Instead of being fulfilled, he was sick and miserable. Previously, he was good-natured, humorous, and outgoing. James grew increasingly withdrawn, isolated, and angry. He eventually was diagnosed with diabetes and high blood pressure after putting on some weight. Instead of spending time with his baker colleagues and regular customers, he now visited doctors and otherwise sat at home alone watching TV and YouTube. Too late, James realized that he had made a terrible mistake. I traded in my friends and a job I loved and moved into a neighborhood where people tend to keep to themselves in their giant houses. It's just a kind of lonely experience, he said to Dr. Murphy. A number of years ago, I spoke from this bema about the pervasive problem of loneliness in our society, in our congregation, and for many of us, even in our own homes. And since that time, the problem has gotten, unfortunately, much worse, not better. We're more insular than ever now. We faced a global pandemic that kept us away from those closest to us for 2 years. Many of us just got used to being lonely and haven't been able to break its spell. And if you find yourself feeling lonely as we begin this new year, like James in his house by himself, know that you are far from alone. Even back in 2018, a report from the Henry J. Kaiser Foundation found that 22% of all adults in 2018 felt that they normally or almost always feel socially isolated. They feel lonely. Another study showed that 1 in 3 adults over the age of 45 feel lonely. Those are giant numbers representing millions of people in our country who are thirsting for connections. And these surveys were done prior to the 2020 pandemic. It's now likely that the majority of American adults, and perhaps many of us sitting in this room, often experience loneliness. Dr. Murphy notes early on that there is a major difference between loneliness and solitude. Yes, some of us are introverts and we prefer solitude, and that's okay. During my sabbatical this past year, I spent more time than probably ever alone in my life. I spent days upon days sitting in coffee shops, reading novels, enjoying these picturesque quiet winter days. I was alone but not lonely. Sometimes solitude, of course, is actually good for us, and it helps us grow. But I imagine all of us here know what that feeling of loneliness is, that subjective perception of isolation, the discrepancy between the social connections for which we yearn and the ones we have. We can be in a crowded room of people, or even be sitting in our packed sanctuary on this high holy day, even with a spouse or a loved one, and still feel quite lonely, unseen, and unknown. Loneliness could be the widow who lost her spouse and is still trying to figure out what life is going to look like going forward. Lonely could be a 30-year-old whose friends are all getting married and having babies, and those life events aren't in his plans. Loneliness could be moving to a new city to be close to kids and grandkids, yet not yet having a support network that surrounded you in the past. And loneliness can be even experienced by people in happy, loving marriages with lots of friends, but they're still searching for connection. Rabbi Mark Katz writes that loneliness has been a feature of the human condition since the dawn of creation. In Genesis, we learn that after creating everything else, everything in the world we see around us, and calling each thing good, or tov, God looked at Adam, alone without a companion, and labeled loneliness as the first human problem. It's not good for humanity to be alone, God declares. In fact, the very first thing in the entire Torah that God calls lo tov, not good, is this idea of loneliness. While this is literally the first problem in the Torah, it feels just as sharp and present today as it did then. There are so many factors that contribute to this large uptick in feelings of loneliness in 2023. We are all so connected these days, and many find community online, but sometimes our connections to our devices also builds up walls around us in the real world. As Robert Putnam wrote in his famous book, Bowling Alone, these days, statistically, we vote less, we're less likely to attend public meetings or get involved in social institutions. We don't do social activities anymore. We go to fewer picnics and dinner parties and keep to ourselves. We don't know our neighbors like we once did. For safety, our kids play in the backyard instead of the front yard. The title of his book comes from the phenomenon that he discovered, where the number of Americans who went bowling rose by 10%, while the number who were members of bowling leagues dropped by 40%. That is a lot of people bowling alone. Loneliness is so pervasive that in the last few years, a huge industry has popped up to help people feel more connected. There's an app that was released last year called Bumble, BFF. You might know Bumble as a dating app. This is the friend version of the dating app, and there are many more like it where you can find friends in your area to meet for coffee. One of the main ways that the AI interface, ChatGPT, has been used is for people to find friends to talk to, even if it's not really human. And there are even a number of apps like Cuddlist.com, where you can pay a professional cuddler to come and give cuddle therapy in your house to help you feel less alone. It's not weird or anything, no judgment. Luckily, Jewish tradition gives us some clear advice as to where to start integrating our lives with those around us without having to pay a cuddler. In just a few moments, we will again hear the call of the shofar, that striking sound of tikiyah. We know that the shofar is a wake-up call, a call to turn back to that version of ourselves to which we aspire. But the call of shofar also is supposed to deliver a message of comfort. And that message is, there is still hope. As long as we have breath in our body, there is still hope that we can change. And that hope, that eternal Jewish yearning to make our lives better in the coming year, can lead us perhaps out of our comfort zones, but also out of loneliness. Before my father died suddenly last summer, I had no idea about the heaviness and the loneliness of the weight of grief could take. For many years, I have sat with families in very dark times and witnessed the grief of horrible and sometimes unnatural loss. But it wasn't until I experienced a life-changing loss myself that I understood that a really tough aspect of grief is the loneliness that comes with it. Especially in those first weeks and months after my dad died, I just wanted to talk about him and his loss all the time. Lauren and I later laughed about this, but I remember sitting in the parents' area at Jake's Taekwondo class last summer, just after we had returned from the funeral and some time in Milwaukee. Another parent who I'd never met before sat down on the bench next to me. We introduced ourselves, and I think within about 2 sentences, I started telling him that my dad had just died, how tough it was, how I was in mourning. The man was very nice and listened for a few moments and offered his condolences, but then very quickly had to take a phone call, and I don't think I ever saw him again. He couldn't have gotten out of there quicker. I imagine that there are a lot of us in the room today who have experienced a loss like mine, who just want to share how they are feeling, or maybe they don't have the words or don't want to burden friends or loved ones. That is so lovely, and it's so lonely. I imagine for many of us, there is also very intense private loneliness around the feelings of otherness. Maybe we look around our community and we just feel that we are different. We don't fit in with what we perceive to be the norm. Maybe we've been quietly dealing with an illness or our own aging, or we're trying to figure out who we authentically are, or we are dealing with a parent who's suffering from an illness or Alzheimer's. And instead of trying to find someone with whom to discuss our feelings, we shut out the world and we find ourselves feeling unseen, unrecognized, and even more lonely. But remember the call of the shofar. Remember the call of hope and that call of change. That call that tells us that every single person in this room and watching at home is deserving of connection. On Rosh HaShanah, when we hear the blast of the shofar, perhaps we can think of it as a blast to call ourselves to vulnerability. That science around loneliness shows that if we have even one or two trusted people in our lives, we will be significantly less lonely. And in order to form those connections, in order to be seen, we have to take that vulnerable step of reaching out to a friend or a relative or a spouse and let them know that we need them. I've been in pain, or I haven't felt comfortable saying anything, or I would love to have coffee with you and tell you what's really been going on with me. And we also have the responsibility to look out for our friends and relatives who also may be in need. Maybe there's someone in your circle who has pulled away or would benefit from a call or text from you. May the call of the shofar guide us to help and to be helped. Vulnerability, letting down our guard, sharing ourselves, reaching out to others, those can be cures for loneliness. Perhaps in this new year we can find some other ways to engage in our community. When Becca Foskel was hired in July as our Director of Membership and Engagement, it was the first time in our congregation's history that we have had a full-time engagement professional. One of our goals this year is to revamp our entire system of affinity groups. There are small groups of people who share interests and demographics with one another. Here at the dawn of 5784, I want you to know that you do not have to be lonely. We here at the Temple can help you find your people. Here are just a small selection of the affinity groups that Becca is going to be helping launch. Some of them actually exist already. There are the Judies, the Jewish foodies who like to go out to restaurants monthly. They're fun. There are the theater enthusiasts, empty nesters, the chronic illness support group, grief and loss support group, poker players, gardening group, TBS gamers. There are the creative writers, a knitting group, and so much more. Maybe you have an idea for a group that you would like to lead. These might not all take off. We don't know what'll actually take and what won't, but the goal of every single group at the Temple is for people to connect with one another, to find others whom we share life experiences with, to ensure that next year at this time we feel more connected and less lonely. You can sign up for those groups or suggest your own at the Temple website or with some QR codes down in the social hall during the Kiddush brunch that follows the service. I'm also excited to announce one other new program that will be starting at TBS this fall, and we're calling this program Gesher. Gesher is the Hebrew word for bridge or a connecting point. The Gesher program is a simple concept that could have a big impact. There are people in our congregation who have a hard time leaving their houses, who are not as mobile as they once were, especially in the winter. And there are people in our congregation of every age who are longing for conversation and companionship. What we will do with the Gesher program is pair up somebody who would like a regular visit with someone who would like to visit them. We're not asking much from the visitors. We're asking 1 hour per month as we start the program. 1 hour per month. Maybe you are recently retired or retiring and looking for more to do during the day. Maybe you want to connect with somebody and make a difference in someone's life. There are obvious benefits on both sides of this bridge, both sides of this Gesher. If you're interested in visiting or being a visitor, you also can go to the Temple website and sign up to be a Gesher volunteer or to receive a Gesher volunteer. Or if an online form isn't your thing, call the Temple office and we'll get you into the system. Our goal is to get the Gesher program up and running by late fall. 1 hour a month to do a mitzvah for someone else, and then at the same time to do a mitzvah for yourself is an achievable goal. Retired physician Mike Bernstein writes, "After my wife of 44 years died, I didn't feel the urge to socialize or really do anything at all. I spent much of that first year sitting in our house, watching TV. I was living, but not really. I hadn't lived a day without my wife since we were 18 years old, and I immediately felt into deep despair and loneliness. But that didn't stop my friend Ron from inviting me to a group of guys who get together every Thursday for dinner. I told him I wasn't ready. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. So he called again next week. Come with us. You don't have to pretend. Just come with us and join us. Again, I said no, Mike writes. He kept calling and texting every single week for literally 6 months until finally Mike said, okay, I'll go. Anything to keep you from calling me every week. He writes, it has now been 5 years since my wife died, and thanks to Ron, I am now part of a dinner group that meets every week. Of course, there's so much more than the meal out each week. I have a bunch of people who care about me. If I miss a week, my phone starts ringing. If there's a new restaurant opening or an exhibit at a museum or a game or a movie, I have someone to go with. If I'm feeling lonely, which I sometimes do, I have friends who feel like family who will drop everything and help me. It's more than anything I could have hoped for. When we hear the call of the shofar, that ancient call of hope that has transformed our people for thousands of years, let us answer that call by reaching out to one another, by sharing of ourselves openly and vulnerably with those who care about us, by fostering deep connections through the Gesher program, by finding new friends and companions in affinity groups, by taking that first scary step away from loneliness toward hope. In the face of one another, we can find ourselves again. During our shofar service, we sing the words, Hayom Harat Olam. Today, the world is born anew. Every single person deserves connection. Every single person deserves companionship. Every single person deserves love. May we in 5784 step into our world anew with love and compassion and openness. Together we say, amen. We're going to be turning in just a moment to the reading of the Torah, which is a lovely aspect of Rosh HaShanah morning services. You can find the Torah service on page 227. Page 227, I'm going to invite our president, Evan Dubrow, to join us on the bima, and we'll invite you to please rise.
אין כמוך ואלוקים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכו כל עמים, וממשלתך בדור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, Adonai Yevarech et Amo Vashalom. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai Merushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato. Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Lecha Adonai HaGedolah, VeHaGvivura, VeHaTiferet, VeHaNetzach, VeHaHod. Ki ho bashamayim uvaretz, Ki ho bashamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai hamalecha, v'amitzaseh lechol arov. Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Amen. Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Amen. All the rock, all the dark, all the hasadim, all the rock, all of the dark, all gimelut hasadim, all shlosha devarim, all shlosha devarim, all shlosha devarim, olam, olam, amen, all shlosha devarim. Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Amen. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtakavu l'chol kodesh. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtakavu l'chol kodesh. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakavu l'chol kodesh. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtakavu l'chol kodesh. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Amen. Shlosha Devarim. Shlosha Devarim, Shlosha Devarim, Olam, Olam, Amen. All Torah, all Avodah, all Gevurah Hasadim. All Torah, all Avodah, all Gevurah Hasadim.
You may be seated. Okay. We're reading the Torah in 3 sections today. We have 3 sets of readers, and let's see here. Let's make sure we're in the right section. There we go. Okay, Leah, come on over. Hold on to that side there. And we're going to do some communal aliyot, because that is our tradition on Rosh Hashanah. So for the first aliyah, we're going to invite anybody who has recovered from an illness this past year, if you or are in recovery from an illness. So if you'd like to consider yourself in that group, we're going to, at the count of 3, do the blessing together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Amen. Vayehi achar advarim ha'ele ve'Elohim niset Avraham ve'omer elav Avraham ve'omer hineni Vayomer קח נא את בנך את יחידך, אשר אהבת את יצחק ולך לך לארץ המריאה, והעלהו שם לעולל אחר ההרים, אשר אמר אליך. וישכם אברהם בבוקר ויחבוש את חמרו, ויקח את שני נעריו, את יצחק בנו ויבקע עצי עולה ויבקעם וילך אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים. ביום השלישי וישא אברהם את עיניו וירא את המקום מרחוק, ויאמר אברהם אל נעריו, שבו לכם פה עם החמור, ואני והנער נלך עד כה ונשתחוו ונשובה עליכם.
Beautiful. Let's do the blessing afterward together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Yasher koach. Beautifully done. For the next Aliyah, we're going to call a tag team to join us here. Jamie and Bernie are going to join us on the bima. And for the second Aliyah itself, if you celebrated what you consider to be a big birthday or a big anniversary this year, I'll invite you to join me in doing the Aliyah. 1, 2, 3. Baruch et Adonai, come on over, guys. Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
ויקח אברהם את עצי העולה וישם את יצחק בני, ויקח בידו את האש ואת המאכלת, וילכו שניהם יחדיו. ויאמר יצחק אל אברהם אביו, ויאמר אבי, ויאמר הנני בני, ויאמר הנה האש והעצים, ואיה הסה לעולה. ויאמר אברהם עליהם, יראה לו הסה לעולה בני, וילכו שניכם יחדיו. ויבוא אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים, ויבן שם אברהם את המזבח, ויערוך את העצים, ויעקוד את יצחק בני, וישם אותו על המזבח ממעל לעצים.
All right, let's do the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
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 Wait, hold on 1 second. So we're doing a second A blessing here. And for our second A blessing, anyone who did some kind of volunteer work this year, why don't you do this blessing with us? Baruch et Adonai hamvarach, Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Amen. Vayishlach Avraham et yado. V'yikach et hamachela lishvat et bincha. V'yikra elav malach Adonai mi'ashamayim. Vayomer Avraham, Avraham. Vayomer hineni. Vayomer al tishlach yadcha el hanar. V'al taslo muma. Ki ata yadati. כי אלוהים אתה, ולא שכחת את בנך אחיך ממני. ויישא אברהם את עיני וירא, והנה איל אחר בסך בקרניו. וילך אברהם ויקח את האיל ויעלהו לעולה תחת בנו, ויקרא אברהם שם המקום ההוא אדוני יראה, אשר יאמר היום בחר אדוני יראה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah. Nicely done, guys. V'chayei olam nata b'tokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Yasher koach, everyone. For the third or fourth Aliyah, however you want to say it, we're going to invite anybody who has recently retired. If you have in the last 4 to 5 years or so, maybe use your own judgment, but if you have recently retired or in the process of retiring, let's celebrate that by doing a blessing together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. We got Joel Kent here at Vayikra right there.
Amen. Vayikra malach Adonai el Avraham shenit min hashamayim, vayomer v'nishbati neum Adonai ki yan asher asita et hadavar hazeh v'lo chasachta et bincha et yehidecha ki varech averechecha והרבה הרבה את זרעך ככוכבי השמיים וכחול אשר על שפת הים, וירש זרעך את שער אויביו, והתברכו בזרעך כל גויי הארץ עקב אשר שמעת בקולי. וישב אברהם אל נעריו, ויקומו, וילכו יחדיו אל באר שבע, וישב אברהם בבאר שבע.
Let's do the blessing after. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Beautiful Torah readings by all 4 people who are up here. We are very, very thankful, and thankful to you for doing all of those blessings. We're going to join together with the Torah still out and vulnerable. We're going to turn to our Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for those who are in need of healing. You can find the words for that on page 263. And we'll invite you, if you'd like to shout out the name of somebody who is in need of healing, you can say it aloud. Otherwise, you can just name them in your hearts as well. Adonai Rofeha Cholim. Blessed are you, God, who sends us healing when we need it and strength. Sing together.
Mishaberach Avotenu B'kol Avraham Elotenu
please rise as we lift the Torah and then dress the Torah. You don't have to do that. Just do it.
Zod HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Lifnei Bnei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai Biyad Moshe Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai
You may be seated. But not for too long, because we're going to get to the shofar section here on page 267. Our second of 3 shofar calls. Lindsay, come on back up here. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu zochreinu b'zicharon tov lefanecha, God of remembrance. Remember the covenant of our ancestors. We reaffirm it today. Remember, we are a people of noble ideals. Help us attain them. Remember all your people, all the nations on the road to peace. Bless their efforts. Remember with mercy the binding of Isaac, the sorrow of Sarah, Abraham's words, here I am. Let's read together. Our memory fades, but you remember all that we have forgotten. Your presence is a throne where all things matter and nothing is lost. Baruch atah Adonai, zocher habrit. Blessed are you, Adonai. You remember your covenant. You remember us. Please rise. All right. Tekiah. Shevarim Teruah. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shevarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Teruah. Tekiah. Beautiful. Very nice. Come stay over here. And you may be seated as we sing Hayom Harat Olam.
Hayom Harat Olam Hayom Harat Olam Yai lai la 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 Yai lai la la Yai lai la 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 Yai lai la la Hayom Harat Olam Hayom Harat Olam.
We'll invite everyone to please rise on page 277 as we return the Torah to the Ark.
Eitz hayim hi lamasikim ba b'tov hecha me'ushar darachei ham b'kol netivotecha shalom ashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Kadesh Ameinu Kadesh Ameinu Kakadesh
may be seated. We turn back to this idea of teshuvah as we near the conclusion of our service here. Return again, returning to that version of ourselves that we aim for.
Return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you were born and reborn. Return again, return to the land of your soul. Return, the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn.
On page 284, we'll invite you once again to please rise for our final shofar section of the service. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea kol teruat amo Yisrael barachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, the true voice of your people, the voice of hope. Tikiyah, shevarim teruah. Tikiyah, Tikiyah, Shivarim, Tikiyah, Tikiyah, Teruah, Tikiyah Gadolah.
Hayom harat olam, hayom harat olam. Yai lai la 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 la. Yai lai yai lai lai yai lai la 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 la. Yai lai yai lai lai. Hayom harat olam. Hayom harat olam.
Aleinu is on the next page, 286.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשה נגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וקור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
During this time of year, Rosh Hashanah is also called Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembering. And we turn to our Kaddish prayer with that remembrance strong in our hearts and, God willing, in our lives. This Shabbat, we are recalling the losses of loved ones in our community who we have recently lost. We're thinking of Jerry Zale Edelman, Joanne Glazer, and June Weller. And we're remembering people who died at this season in years past. We're thinking with love of Mabel Abramovitz, Meyer Abramson, Frida Bash, Louis Bender, Sam Birnbaum, Martha Cohn, Howard Cooperman, Joanne Feldman, Rebecca Handler, Judy Hirsch, Tracy Johnson, Louis Katz, Archie Rafal, Raymond Russell, Goldie Schumann, Judy Stein, Ruth Tannenbaum. I ask, are there others who we are thinking of for Kaddish this morning? For those we named aloud, and for those who are aloud in our hearts, we'll join together in the Kaddish prayer on page 292. Page 292. Yidkadal v'yidkadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yamechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'olam ulamei almaya yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudasham b'richu Le'ela min kol t'vihirata v'shirata, tush v'chata v'nechamata, damiran ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God, who sends peace and comfort to all who mourn, together send peace to us and to the entire world, and to which we say, Amen. You may be seated. Just a couple of important announcements coming up. Downstairs is going to be a kiddish brunch happening right now, or starting in about 8 minutes. I want to mention that we have the Jewish value of Bal Tashchit. That is the idea that we want to conserve the earth and not waste food. So everything that we use downstairs, plates, forks, napkins, everything is compostable. And you'll see there's large compost bins downstairs in the social hall. Staff will be on duty to make sure that everything goes in the right spots. Special thanks to Steve and Joanne Grossman, who will also be on duty downstairs to make sure things go in the right spots, and to the green team for helping make this happen. So that's very exciting stuff. Shishirim, the musical service, the completely musical service, is at 11:30 outside in the parking lot. Then there's another lunch if you didn't fill up at 11:30 at 1:30. Tashlich is at 2 o'clock, and then second day services are tomorrow at 10 a.m. Before we sing our closing song, let's turn to page 294 for a blessing for this new year. Hayom te'amsenu, strengthen us on this day. Amen. Let's read these together. Hayom tevarchenu, bless us today. Amen. Hayom tegadlenu, lift up our lives on this day. Amen. Hayom tidrashenu litova. Grant us goodness today. Amen. Hayom tichtivenu lechayim tovim. Inscribe us for a good life on this day. Amen. Hayom tishma she'avatenu. Hear our heartfelt words today. Amen. Hayom tikabel barachamim uvratzon et tefilatenu. On this day we receive our prayers with love. Amen. Hayom titmechenu biminim tzedakah. Fortify our best intentions. May we go forth today to do your righteous work. Amen. Adon Olam is on page 298.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol, Yitzir Nivra, Yed Nasfa, Vahev Sakol, Zay Melech, Shebo Nikra, Yahweh, Kilo Makol, Levado, Yimloch Noah, Uhaya, Ma'oveh, Ahuhiyah, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yein Nasav, V'ev Sakol, Zay Melech, Shebo Nikra,
Ve'acharei kitlot hakol, levado yimloch norav, v'hu hayam v'hu oved, v'hu yeh b'tifara.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yein Nasav, V'ev Sakol, Zay
Melech shelo nikra, ve'acharei kitlot hakol, levado yimloch norav, v'hu hayam v'hu oved,
Verse 3. V'hu echad ve'ein sheni, v'ham shilo v'havira, v'lireshi v'litachli, v'lo ha'oz v'hamizra, v'hu eli v'hai korim v'soreli v'ei sara, v'hu nisi u'manosli, v'nan kosi v'yom hekra, v'yahado akiduhim v'elishon v'adira, v'imruvi v'yati, Adonai v'lo yira. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yein Nasav, V'ev Sakol, Zay Melech, Shebo Nikra, V'acharei kitlot hakol, Levado yimloch norav, v'hu hayam v'hu oved, v'hu yeh b'tifara. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol, Yitzir Nivra, V'yein Nasav, V'ev Sakol, Zay Melech, Shebo Nikra, V'acharei kitlot hakol, Levado yimloch norav, v'hu hayam v'hu oved, b'tifara, v'hu hayam v'hu oved, b'tifara, v'hu hayam v'hu oved, b'tifara, v'hu hayam v'hu oved, b'tifara.
Shana Tova, everyone. Happy 5784. Thank you to our amazing musicians for the uplifting music.
And the choir.
And the choir's musicians.
Musicians.